I'm Nathan, and welcome to Stories with a Twang. Today's episode is called The Hungry Man is Not a Myth by Scary Max. I know that there are dozens of stories about the hungry man that you've probably heard if you've ever worked in fast food. Most of them are probably lies, but that doesn't mean he's made up. This is the no bullshit truth of my encounter with him back in the early 2000s. I'm 5'2", and back then I weighed maybe 90 pounds. People called me a chihuahua. I was the youngest female manager in my region, and I ran a tight ship. I expected everyone to do their jobs, but I was fair with the scheduling, and if someone needed to pick up a shift, I usually took it myself. In January, we got hit with a brutal storm in the middle of the cold and flu season. I lived close to the restaurant, so I was able to make the short drive in, but half of my coworkers called out. I probably should have just closed down, but that wasn't in my nature. We ended up with 3 workers, 2 cooks, plus me. So I made the decision to close the drive-thru and work the register myself, dine-in only. The hungry man came in 5 minutes after we opened. He was 6 feet tall and ungodly thin, practically a walking corpse. I couldn't have told you his age, maybe 30, maybe 40. He definitely had the weird stretch marks on his neck, just like everyone says. His walk was labored as he paced to the counter, shivering and tracking snow behind him. I said my usual greeting, and the man opened his shaking hand, dropping 2 crumpled, wet dollar bills on the counter. "Small fry," he whispered, his chapped lips cracked and bleeding. Yes, we served fries in the morning, burgers too. "Anything else?" I asked, trying to stay smiling. I felt bad for the guy. He was clearly starving, but he shook his head and repeated, "Small fry." I definitely tried to sneak him an extra fry or 2 as I got the order ready. He took the bag without meeting my eyes, then walked slowly back outside, into the falling snow. "You ever see that guy before?" I asked the cooks, but they both shrugged. Considering the weather, we did decent business. Even in a blizzard, people still need to eat. The morning passed pretty normally. We made extra coffee. Outside, the snow kept piling up. Then at lunch, the hungry man came in again. At first, I didn't recognize him because he wasn't thin anymore. He looked like a normal weight guy, kind of hot even. His walk was stronger now and more confident as he approached the counter. I would have just assumed he was a totally different person, except those distinctive marks on his neck were still there. Definitely stretch marks, just like my sister got when she had her twins. "Medium fry," he said, his voice a little more sure this time. "Sure," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I was a little freaked out, but honestly still convinced somehow that this was the guy's brother or something. I handed him the bag and he left. After that, the storm got worse. By 4 o'clock, the clouds were so thick it felt like night outside, and no customers were coming in anymore. At some point, one of the cooks told me he was leaving. A few minutes later, the other one left without even telling me. I should have closed, but like I said, that's not who I was. We'd banked a decent amount of food on the warmers, and I'd figured I'd at least keep the doors open for a few more hours to eke out a little more revenue. At around 6 o'clock, outside was pitch black. The hungry man walked back in. He was fat now, maybe 350 pounds of lard. Same marks on his neck, same blank stare. No question, it was the same dude. He wobbled up to the counter, covered in snow. "Large fry," he said, his voice deeper than before. My heart beat fast in my chest, and I tried not to meet his eyes. He looked past me at the quiet, empty kitchen. "All alone," he said. I headed back to the kitchen and put together a large fry. When I came back to the counter, I found him there. He had picked up a handful of ketchup packets and was popping them in his mouth whole, chewing and swallowing them, wrappers and all. "So hungry," he said as I tried not to drop the fries. He looked back at the kitchen again. "All alone," he said again, and a chill ran through me. I had ignored bad vibes a couple of times in high school and paid a steep price. After that, I'd promised never to put myself in dangerous situations with a guy ever again. "We're actually closing soon?" I said, almost whispering. He took a step forward. There was something unnatural about the way he moved. Like he wasn't actually as fat as he looked, more like a thin guy in a pillow suit. He didn't wobble like he should have, and he was fast. "All alone," he said again. "So hungry." And then he smiled at me in a way I'd never seen before, like his mouth shouldn't have been able to stretch that wide. "Let me get you a couple more things," I said, "on the house." I headed back to the kitchen, thinking I'd grab some more fries, maybe a few burgers from the warmers, but something in me whispered, "Keep walking," so I did. I headed past the kitchen and back into the storage area. I was running now. There was a service entrance in the back, and I bolted through it out into the raging snow. I didn't stop sprinting until I reached my car. I fumbled with the keys as a storm raged around me. Over the howl of the wind, though, I began to hear the thump-thump of heavy steps, followed by the heavy thud of something metal hitting the ground. I couldn't see anything through the screaming snow, but I could tell I wasn't alone in the parking lot. Finally, I got the car door open and jumped inside, and then my heart practically stopped. The entire passenger seat was filled with fast food wrappers. Not just from our place, but they were from all around the neighborhood. Taco Bell, McDonald's, Dairy Queen. He must have been hitting them up all day. I screamed, but I didn't lose my head. I jammed the keys in the ignition. Thank God my engine actually started. As my lights came on, the beams illuminated the service door, and I saw him there. Somehow, even bigger now. The door had busted off its hinges and lay on the ground by his feet. He was holding a foil-wrapped burger, watching me curiously. Then he shyly waved and went back inside. I heard a few days later that one of the girls at Arby's never made it home that night. People figured she got lost in the storm, maybe had her car go over a bridge or something, but they never did find her. It was like she'd just vanished, bones and all. I put in my notice a few days later. They offered me more money, opportunities for growth, you name it. They asked if I was going to a different restaurant. I just told them that I was done with fast food. Our next story is called I Encountered a Creature That Feeds on Memories by Scary Max. I was not born with the ability to see the memory feeders. It's something that came to me when I was 5, after a beating from my maternal grandfather left me close to death. When I woke up in the hospital, I saw one of the creatures for the first time. At first, I thought it was a bird looking at me through the air vent. It made jerky movements and twisted its head at impossible angles. Then it flattened itself as thin as a stingray and seeped out of the vent, entering my hospital room, where it flew down and landed on my grandfather's shoulder as he slept. Then it opened its mouth and stuck its long tongue into his ear. I sat there, holding my hospital blanket tight. I would have screamed except my lips were so swollen I could barely open my mouth. And so I just sat there, shaking, trying not to make a sound. When the police visited my room and asked my grandfather what had happened to me, he told them, "Well, I don't remember." And he was telling the truth. I work in hospice care now in a large city. We specialize in family work, and many of our clients are in their 40s and 50s. The creatures love to feed here because the memories are fresh and whole. Over time, I've learned their habits. They prefer the taste of happy memories, weddings, births, birthdays, graduations. There are some clients they just won't touch. The dying men with no families, with hollow eyes, might as well be rotten meat to the memory eaters. I genuinely don't interfere with the creatures feeding. My clients are generally so close to death that I figure they have a few memories to spare. What's the harm if a Christmas morning gets forgotten? And if I'm being honest, maybe I've been jealous, because I'm rotten meat. I search and all I find are bad memories. My mom's OD, my grandparents' resentment, my dad visiting dead drunk, shouting into the night. The feeders avoid me like I'm radioactive. I do try to keep the feeders away from visitors. The creatures can hardly contain themselves when children's footsteps come thumping down the hall, eager to see mom or grandma. If I'm not careful, the creatures will descend upon the vents and feed on the first time Emma saw snow, or that Friday Samuel skipped school and cuddled with mom on the couch all day. In general, a vacuum is enough to scare them off. So if I see them eyeing a child's ear, I'll head into the room and get busy, even if it interrupts a tender conversation between mother and daughter. Sometimes, though, the creatures cling to their victims like addicts, and I have to take more drastic action. I've found that I can grab them by the wings and fling them out the window. Once or twice I've killed them, snapping their necks, but afterward the stench of sulfur was overpowering, and it took weeks of scrubbing my hands before they felt clean. Overall, I would say we'd had an uneasy truce, until last week. Last week, a teenage girl snuck in after hours. She was basically an angel in human form. Star student, constantly volunteering at the local Humane Society. Her dad had been a beloved high school teacher until he drew the wrong card and ended up with stage 4 liver cancer, and he didn't even drink. The girl was convinced that it was Dad's last night on Earth and couldn't bear the thought of him dying without her there. So she snuck into the facility. I'm still not sure how. When I found her, she was sleeping in a chair in her dad's room, and perched on her shoulder was the biggest memory eater I'd ever seen. It was as big as a condor, wings stretching maybe 4 feet wide. It knelt over the girl with its worm-like tongue pulsing in her ear as memories flowed down its throat. It met my eyes as it drank, and for the first time since my childhood, I was afraid of one. This was no little bird I could fling out the window. This one would fight. This one would kill me. I stood there shaking as the creature stared at me with its black eyes, warning me that one more step could mean death. I started to back away. If I left things as they were, no one would ever know. Even the girl might go through her whole life never realizing what had happened, what she was missing. Something in me couldn't do it. No matter how much I wanted to run, I wouldn't let myself. And so I charged forward, tackling the creature off the girl. It clawed at me with its talons, ripping my arms. They stung with invisible wounds, like I'd been lashed with invisible whips. It bit at me too, trying to blind me with its beak. When that didn't work, it unleashed its tongue, licking at my face, its saliva burning me like acid. Holding its body off with my left hand, I reached forward with my right, grabbing the creature's tongue. Then I wrapped it around my arm over and over, gritting my teeth as the acid seeped through my skin. As it did, I began to realize I was forgetting. My mother was the first to go. I still had the awareness of her overdose, but the details began to grow fuzzy. Once I remembered the exact angle of her body, some kind of smell that surrounded her, some kind of last words she'd written. Now they were all disappearing down the creature's throat. And as it ate them, it gagged, like it had eaten shit or vomit. The creature tried to pull away, but I kept holding its tongue. The memories all began to disappear. My grandparents were sucked out little by little until all that remained was some vague bullet points, like they were a movie I'd just seen in my youth and then forgotten. Then my dad was gone too, and all the bullying through middle school, the dark things I'd thought about in high school too. The years lost in wondering before I finally got my shit together and made it into nursing school. The creature was weak on its feet now, barely able to stand. And finally it fell to the floor, dead and bloated. Finally, as I unleashed its tongue, a wave of tiredness washed over me and I closed my eyes. I don't see the creatures anymore, but maybe there are things we're not meant to see. Even now I can feel the shape of them fading from my mind. I guess that's part of why I'm writing this down in case I forget them entirely. I'm ready to forget. There's a kind of bliss in it. Ever since that night, I walk the halls of this hospice and I don't feel heavy anymore. I never used to hug the grieving families, but now I do. When that teen girl's father died, I held her close as she wept in my arms and she kept saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Had she woken up? Had she seen the fight? Or was she thanking me for something else? And in truth, I could barely remember what I'd done. Alright everyone, so that's it for this week's stories. I really hope you enjoyed them as much as I did. I would like to give a big thanks to this week's incredible author, Scary Max, for 2 more incredible stories. If you have any stories you would like me to share on the show, you can send them over to storieswithatwang@gmail.com. The show is on Facebook and Instagram at Stories with a Twang Podcast. You can also find new episodes over on YouTube at Stories with a Twang Podcast. It would mean an awful lot if you could rate and review the show wherever you listen, and don't forget to share with your friends and family either. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and until next time, remember that a little twang goes a long way.